A cell phone that helped solve a mysterious murder, an attacker who became a victim himself, and a massacre in a luxury hotel. All of this is about crimes that took place in Ukraine during New Year's celebrations. No New Year's or Christmas spirit here, viewers. This isn't that kind of channel. Nevertheless, I wish you happy holidays, and I wish you peace, happiness, and good health. In this video there will be 3 cases, and it's scary. A resident of Uman, Ina Klochko, was celebrating the arrival of 2014 in her in-laws' apartment. Around 1:30 in the morning, the woman left their apartment and headed to her own home, but she never made it there. And just a few days later, her mutilated body was found in a local field. 43-year-old Ina Klochko lived in Cherkasy region in the city of Uman. She worked at the local tax office, was married, and was raising a daughter who was a student. On December 31, 2013, the woman went to visit the parents of her husband, Ole. Her in-laws' house was located not far from Ina's home. At that time, Ole himself was on a business trip, and their daughter Anna was in the capital studying. The family celebration went calmly and quietly. Everything was fine. After 1 a.m., the woman began preparing to leave. They sat, drank, so why not go sleep? Since it was already quite late and there were a lot of drunk people wandering outside, Ole's father, Leonid, decided to walk his daughter-in-law home.
We sat, quietly celebrated the new year. She was alone. At 1 o'clock, she got ready to go home. I walked her to the kiosks. I returned. She went home alone, and that was the end.
After Mr. Leonid returned home, he received 2 calls from Ina's number. He thought the woman had already made it home. He picked up the phone, but only heard unfamiliar male voices. Then Leonid decided that after returning to her apartment, Ina had turned on the television and accidentally called him. Well, it happens. Actually, with those thoughts, Leonid and his wife went to bed that night. Leonid's in-laws only really started to worry about their daughter-in-law's fate in the morning after she didn't answer any of their calls. Then Leonid went to Ina's home. He had his own keys to the apartment, and when no one opened the front door for him, he was able to enter the apartment himself. However, Ina was not there. She also did not answer the calls. Leonid told his son and granddaughter about the woman's disappearance, and they quickly began searching for her through their friends and acquaintances. However, this produced no results. That's why the family turned to the Uman City Police Department, but they weren't welcomed warmly. They said that it's the holidays now and only 4 people are on duty, and even then, 3 of them are out on calls. As a result, Ina's relatives could only file a missing person report on January 3rd. Afterward, the search for the missing woman began, with law enforcement, the military, and Ina's relatives, friends, and colleagues joining in.
The police are in contact with me online, but they can only monitor hospitals, morgues, and check bars. We are doing everything possible and impossible ourselves. We're checking all the ditches, manholes, and cellars. I really hope that it's still possible to save my mom.
Despite all efforts, they still couldn't find the woman. However, law enforcement officers were able to track the location of her mobile phone. It was detected in the territory of Kirovohrad region. Oleg Likuta, who was investigating this case, together with the operations team, went to Kirovohrad region to find out how Ina's mobile phone ended up there. Upon arrival, it turned out that it was being used by a private entrepreneur named Demyan Melnik. Ole asked the man where he got this phone. In response, he told how he recently passed by Uman and picked up a hitchhiker there who sold him the mobile phone. After hearing Damian's story, the police officers asked him to come with them to the station to tell his story in more detail and help create a sketch of the hitchhiker. Mr. Damian did not object, but he set one condition. He would drive and go only in his own car. Ole Likuta agreed, but he was afraid to let the man go alone, so they went together. At that time, the operations team was in another car and followed them. When Demian's car was crossing the bridge in the village of Rodzeve in the Cherkasy region, the man suddenly asked Ole if he had children and then added, "Forgive me if you can."
At that moment, he suddenly turned the steering wheel to the right and we went off the bridge.
As a result, the car flew off the road into a ditch and landed on the side where Ole was sitting. Both men survived, but as a result of the accident, the police officer suffered a serious back injury, and because of that, he even had to leave the service. In Ole's opinion, Damian caused this accident in order to take both his own life and Ole's.
He had a hysterical fit, screaming about wanting to crash and questioning why he hadn't.
Law enforcement officers regarded the traffic accident as a suicide attempt, but why? Was the man tormented by his conscience? Or maybe he was afraid of being exposed. All this led to the thought that there was no hitchhiker, no phone seller, they simply didn't exist. And Damian himself is directly involved in Ina's disappearance. Now he was no longer seen as a witness who could share valuable information, but as the main suspect in the case. So it was decided to search Damian's house. Upon arriving there, in the village of Dimitrushki, Cherkasy region, law enforcement officers found another car that belonged to the suspect. The car was also damaged, and traces of blood could also be seen on it. And then Damian confessed that on New Year's Eve, while being drunk, he hit Ina with his car.
When talking to the police officers, he behaved confidently and calmly. At first, he denied everything, but after a sanctioned search was conducted and physical evidence was seized, he changed his testimony. He said he didn't kill the woman, just hit her with his car and took her out of the city to cover it up.
43-year-old Damian Melnik not only confessed to the crime, but also agreed to show the place where he hid the body. On January 8th, Ina was found. However, it was a kilometer away from the area the suspect indicated. The victim's family and friends immediately doubted the version that Damian gave. According to them, the area where Ina was returning home that night consists of narrow streets with constant turns. It's hard to speed up in a car there and hit someone, to death. Besides, at the place where, according to the suspect, the traffic accident happened, no traces of blood or car parts were found. This made us wonder if the accident even happened at all. Maybe that night the woman was simply forced into the car with the intention of assault. These speculations were not unfounded, since it became known that Damian Melnik had previously come to the attention of law enforcement. A few years ago, he served time in prison for raping a minor. That's how it is. The victim's grim flashes in the story told by the suspect became even more pronounced after Ina was found. Her body was covered in blood, while the woman's personal belongings were lying separately and were clean. It doesn't seem like a traffic accident, but the most shocking details were revealed by Ina's husband after he received the results of his wife's body examination. So, according to them, the woman did not die as a result of a traffic accident, but from suffocation. And before her death, she was also subjected to sexual violence.
He took her out of the city. He abused her for about 30 to 40 minutes, and then he strangled her.
Did he abuse her? Did he rape her? She was while putting her dress with her jeans pulled up.
He dragged the body into the field, about 30 to 40 meters into the field itself. He told the investigator that he beat her, took her to the field, and left her there. He didn't kill, strangle, or rape her. He just left her in the field and drove off. That someone else, on New Year's night at 2 a.m, in the middle of the field, well...
When all these details became known, the trial began, during which they showed a video recording from the investigative experiment dated January 2014. In it, Melnik described in detail what happened to Ina on that fatal night. Now, his version was a little different. According to him, when he hit the woman, he forced her into the car and started demanding money from her for damaging his car. After that, he drove to a forest strip, undressed his victim, and hit her on the head several times. Then he tried to rape her, but he was so drunk that he couldn't and told the woman to take her things and get out. When she got dressed, he got into his car and left the scene. It's an interesting story, but this testimony was contradicted because the examination showed the victim's genitals were injured, so she was indeed assaulted that night. Because of this, the prosecution was convinced that Melnik raped the woman using his fingers, which is why no traces of his DNA were found on the victim. Then he severely beat the victim, strangled her, and eventually hid the body in a field. When leaving the scene, he took the victim's phone, discarded the SIM card, and kept the phone for himself. Oops. In the end, the judge found Damian Melnik fully guilty and sentenced him to life imprisonment. Soon, the man filed an appeal, which he successfully lost. However, just 4 years after the crime, the Supreme Court overturned Melnik's sentence.
He expressed from the very beginning that he wanted a jury trial. And on the grounds that his legal right was not upheld, the decisions of these two courts were overturned.
At that time, Melnik was still in the detention center. His case was sent for a retrial, and despite the seriousness of the charges brought against the man, it was decided to release him under house arrest. After that, the judges did not have time to extend this preventive measure. Soon, the suspect was completely free. This went on for several months. Then, house arrest was reinstated after all, but there was one catch.
Now, a decision has been made for house arrest from 10 post-meridium to 7 ante-meridium. And for the rest of the time, he can be anywhere he wants.
In 2018, journalists visited Damian Melnik's village and spoke with him. At that time, the man was living with his common-law wife and raising 2 children. He asked not to show his face, explaining that he was currently looking for a job, and now Damian completely denied any involvement in the crime. He stated that he did not kill the woman and was not involved in the traffic accident with her. As the suspect explained, he was forced to confess to the crime by law enforcement officers.
The police decided to earn some stars for the new year and have no desire to investigate. They found me and pinned all sorts of trouble on me. The case is fabricated. I do not admit my guilt and never have. The police officers fabricated the case. Then they made a deal like you admit to the accident and everything will be fine. I said fine. I admitted to the accident, then they started taking me wherever they wanted.
The man also claims that he never held Ina's phone in his hands. No traces of blood were ever found on his car, and the accident he got into with the police officer was just a coincidence. Damian said he just fell asleep at the wheel that day, that's it. Nevertheless, Ole Klochko, in memory of his tragically deceased wife, promised not to give up and to see the case through to the end. And he kept his word. Overall, the trials of Damian Melnik lasted a very long time and dragged on until 2024. Melnik repeatedly appealed and contested decisions. The most recent online update on this case is the Cherkasy Court of Appeals ruling from September 12, 2024. According to it, Damian Melnik was sentenced to 15 years in prison. However, this term was actually shorter because his previous imprisonment from 2014 to 2017 was credited. Based on the calculation, 1 day of pretrial detention counted as 2 days of imprisonment. Well, let's move on. Harassment, threats with a knife, and a fatal stab wound to the abdomen. That's how the New Year's disco ended in the village of Kovalivka in the Mykolaiv region. This story immediately attracted the attention of social media users because it was about a complicated case in which a potential rape victim became the main suspect in a murder. So, on January 1st, 2022, around 6 in the morning, the police received a report about a murder. When they arrived at the scene, law enforcement officers found the body of a 25-year-old man. The deceased was a local resident named Victor who died from a stab wound to the liver. The police were able to learn more about the reasons for this crime after talking to witnesses and local residents. As it turned out, on the eve of the incident, a disco was held at the House of Culture to celebrate the new year. Olya, 30, also decided to visit. The woman lived in the village, worked as a foreman at an agricultural enterprise, and raised 2 young children alone. The villagers spoke very positively about her and called Olha a very caring mother. 25-year-old Victor also came to the party that evening. His reputation turned out to be not so positive. The man came from a troubled family. After 9th grade, he ended up in prison for theft. When he was released, he never found a steady job. Here and there, as they say. Mr. Victor also drank regularly. However, he was not excessively aggressive. Ola and Victor knew each other, but there was no romantic relationship between them. During the disco, they were drinking together, and at some point, they started arguing. Soon after, those involved in the conflict went outside to continue arguing. Local witnesses said Victor made advances toward Olha, wanting intimacy, but she refused. And then the man pulled out a knife that he had brought with him. Then he grabbed the woman by the collar and started threatening her to force her to agree to his proposal. Miss Olha started screaming at that moment. She was heard by Valery, a local disc jockey. He was packing up his equipment at that moment, as the party was already ending. Valery ran outside and saw Victor standing over Olha holding a knife. The disc jockey quickly intervened to protect the woman, grabbing the attacker and pinning him to the wall. Just before Olha grabbed the knife from Victor, and when Valery pinned him against the wall, the woman delivered a fatal blow to her attacker's stomach. Victor died at the scene from his injuries. When Ola realized what had happened, she called the police herself and told them about the murder. She was immediately detained. The woman refused to comment on the situation, referring to Article 63 of the Constitution of Ukraine, according to which a person may not testify against themselves, family members, or close relatives. Meanwhile, the police provided a comment regarding the incident.
According to witness statements, on the street the woman took the knife away from the man, and a club employee, in order to stop the argument, pinned the man against the wall. At that very moment, even though there was no danger to the woman, she stabbed her acquaintance in the stomach with a knife. The police brought the perpetrator to the police station, where investigators detained her in accordance with Article 208 of the Criminal Procedure Code of Ukraine.
The case was opened under the article of intentional murder. According to it, Olaf faced up to 15 years of imprisonment. As the police explained, the suspect killed the attacker at a moment when there was no longer any threat to her, and that's why she was charged specifically with premeditated murder. The fact that Victor was harassing the woman was not taken into account. In their official statement, the police called Olha a perpetrator, not a suspect. The press service also deleted some comments under their post, including those left by well-known lawyers in the country. And all of this caused a massive outcry on social media.
He tried to rape her, threatened her with a knife. With that same knife, he got stabbed in the liver and died. Suddenly, he's now the victim, not the attacker, and she's not a potential rape victim, but a criminal. She didn't want to do it the easy way, even under knife threat. Now it's prison, 15 years. Wonderful. Just wonderful. So, the jerk tried to rape a woman by threatening her with a knife, and when she defended herself, she became the criminal, while he was just demanding reciprocity with a knife. What idiots wrote this? Was she supposed to let herself be killed? In your version, he got what he deserved.
The villagers also stood up for Olha. They claimed that her actions couldn't be qualified as premeditated murder since it was self-defense. People insist that the woman was completely reasonable, never showed aggression, and had no reason to kill anyone. Unless she was attacked? Local residents were also very outraged by the fact that Victor brought a weapon to the party, which ultimately became the cause of his death. And some villagers even suggested a version, according to which Olha did not deliver the fatal blow. Rumor has it Victor fell on the knife himself.
This could happen to anyone. Excuse me, someone comes at you with a knife and tells you to spread your legs. Excuse me, but what was she supposed to do? She was just defending herself.
The woman is completely sane. She wouldn't just attack someone for no reason. As for that guy who attacked her with a knife, well, there's just no explanation for that. He wasn't a very nice young man. It was purely self-defense. I'm more than sure about that. From what I heard, he ran into the knife himself, and besides, it was his knife.
Disc jockey Valery, who reluctantly got involved while protecting Olha from Victor that evening, also commented on the situation.
I won't say anything on camera. I won't speak.
Well, fine. Just say it like this, not on camera.
Please tell me, do you think the girl is guilty in this situation or not? Was she defending herself? Did you see him harassing her?
On the day when Ola's preventive measure was being chosen, she never voiced her version of the events. The woman's lawyer also refused to clarify the situation for journalists. Ola was placed under nighttime house arrest. She was not allowed to leave the region or contact others involved in the case. Meanwhile, law enforcement said the investigation is ongoing, and it is possible that the events may be reclassified in the future. However, unfortunately, neither the media nor the police press service have commented on this story in any way after the woman was given a preventive measure. So its outcome is currently unknown. It is possible that the investigation in the case is still ongoing. That's exactly why there are no updates. The case dates back to 2022. As the previous story shows us, investigations and court proceedings can take a very, very long time. On January 1st, 2024, a group of friends was celebrating the new year at an elite hotel complex. Just like in the previous case, this party also ended in tragedy. And just a few days after that, the son of a scandalously famous capital city judge was declared wanted on suspicion of intentional murder. 25-year-old Ihor Herhel was killed in a cottage at the Zoloty Buaz hotel complex, located in the village of Hribivka, Odessa region. On New Year's Eve, the man received a stab wound to the chest, which caused acute blood loss and ultimately death. That day, besides the victim, there were 4 other people in the cottage. 2 women and 2 men, including 27-year-old Ivan Ablov, the son of former judge of the dissolved Kiev District Administrative Court, Yevhen Ablov, who is known for his scandalous court rulings. In December 2013, Ukrainska Pravda reported that he ordered Berkut officers to disperse Maidan activists. In addition, Ablov Sr. is involved in the so-called Wolf Tapes case. According to it, the head of the Kiev District Administrative Court, Pavlo Vovk, Yevhen Ablov himself, and several others are suspected of creating a criminal organization with the aim of seizing and holding on to power. However, let's return to the story of Ablov Jr. After the murder of Ihor Herhel, Ivan Ablov disappeared, and on January 4th, he was declared wanted on suspicion of this murder. The investigation found that on the night of the crime, a conflict between the victim and the judge's son escalated into a fight during which Ivan fatally wounded his opponent. The incident happened at 4:30 in the morning, and an hour later, Ablov called an acquaintance and asked to be picked up from the scene of the crime. An hour later, the man was in Odessa, where he called a taxi and went to the Dnipropetrovsk region. According to the taxi driver's testimony, on the way they stopped near a store where Ivan bought a new SIM card and a phone. He turned off his old cell phone. The next day, on January 2nd, Ablov's friend arrived at the Goodwill Residence residential complex in Dnipro, where Ablov was staying. Surveillance cameras recorded them going together to a local restaurant and entering inside. An hour later, another car arrived and Ablov and his friend left in it, heading to an unknown location. The man was last seen January 5 in Bilhorod-Dnistrovsky district, Odessa region. The search for the suspect lasted several days, and on the 15th, he turned himself in to the Kiev District Court of Odessa. He said that he ran away because he feared for his life and that he didn't know anything about being wanted during all that time. To support his words, Ivan provided a medical examination certificate dated January 12th. He wanted to show he wasn't hiding, otherwise he wouldn't have visited a medical facility. On the same day that Ivan surrendered, the court placed him in custody without the right to bail and continued the investigation of the case. The crime's witnesses, a man and 2 women present in the cottage during Ihor Herhel's murder, were soon questioned. The first one said that he was sleeping and didn't see either the fight or the murder. He said the men had been arguing since that evening. They reconciled around 11, and the third witness fell asleep. When he woke up around 10 o'clock, he discovered Ihor's body. Meanwhile, one of the women testified that during the celebration, they were all drinking alcohol and relaxing. Then she fell asleep and later woke up to her friend's scream and saw a fight between Ivan and Ihor. According to her, Ivan pushed Ihor onto the couch and started choking him. The woman tried to separate them, but the men were aggressive, and her friend advised her not to get involved so she wouldn't become a victim.
It was a fight. They were on the floor, on the couch. Herhel was definitely alive because I often see dead people since I work at a funeral agency. Herhel was breathing. He was unconscious but breathing, lying on the first floor with Ablov beside him.
Everything happened early in the morning, and the women began preparing to go home. At that moment, one of them saw blood on Ivan's face. They thought he had a broken nose. Ihor, however, showed no visible injuries. The woman also stated that she didn't see a knife in the hands of any of the men or anywhere near the scene of the fight at all. Another eyewitness confirmed they were enjoying themselves and drinking that night. The guys were joking and laughing, then suddenly started fighting out of nowhere. Like, at first it wasn't serious. They were joking around. Ihor Herhel was much taller than Ivan Ablov and was a professional wrestler. At some point, he forcefully threw his opponent to the floor. Ivan was furious and ripped the cross from his friend's neck.
After that, they started arguing and fighting for real. Vanya was already bleeding. A friend yelled to call an ambulance, so I did, and reported someone was in bad condition. Please come. Vanya had blood on his face. I didn't see a knife or anything like a knife in Ablov's hands. I didn't see Ablov stab Hergel with a knife or anything that looked like a knife. I saw Hergel strangling Ablov. Hergel had no blood, but I saw blood on Vanya. Around 4:30 or 5 in the morning, we left the dacha. There was still one more guest in the house, who was sleeping on the upper floor.
Immediately after the arrest, the court placed Ivan Oblov in custody until the 26th of April. They were afraid that the guy with connections could influence the witnesses or escape. However, this decision was changed soon after. On April 11, Judge Yulia Fedolayeva of the Kiev District Court of Odessa granted the lawyer's request and released the suspect under 24-hour house arrest with an electronic bracelet. The prosecution tried to appeal this decision. A hearing on the application was scheduled at the Odessa Court of Appeal. However, on that very day, Ivan Oblov suddenly felt unwell and was sent to the intensive care unit.
Ablov's defenders said he became ill en route and was admitted to intensive care.
Interestingly, that day, journalists called the Center for Prevention and Treatment of Vascular Catastrophes at the Odessa Clinical Hospital, where Ablov was supposedly to be taken. But they said that no patient with that last name had been admitted to them. At the same time, the victim's mother told the press that even though on April 11 Ivan Ablov was ordered to wear an electronic bracelet, which should have signaled any violation of his preventive measure, as of the 26th it still had not been put on him. And it was on April 26th that the preventive measure expired, and after that Ivan was free to move around the city. Shortly after that, on May 14, journalists managed to photograph a black Land Cruiser driven by the younger Ablov. On May 16, another court hearing was supposed to take place, where a motion to apply a preventive measure in the form of detention against Ablov was to be considered. However, two of the judges had previously worked and studied with the suspect's father, Yevhen Ablov. Therefore, they were removed from the process and the hearing was disrupted. The next one was scheduled for May 21st, but this time as well, they were unable to choose a preventive measure for Ivan Ablov. The reasons for this decision were not disclosed. Only on the 31st of the same month did the investigating judge of the Kiev District Court of Odessa finally choose a preventive measure for the suspect in the form of detention. On June 4, 2024, the pretrial investigation in the case was officially completed. Now, the suspect and his lawyers had the opportunity to familiarize themselves with the case materials. The prosecutors appealed to the court to set deadlines for familiarization, as they believed that the lawyers would deliberately do this slowly and thus delay the entire trial process. But the court refused to grant this motion. In July 2024, the case was transferred for hearing to the Ovidiopol District Court of Odessa region. At what stage this story is now is unknown. As you know, the suspect's father has many connections in the judicial field. Ivan's mother, Mrs. Irina, is a judge at the Komentanivsky District Court in Odessa region. I really want to believe that this will not affect the further consideration of the case in any way. But it is what it is. Well, dear friends, thank you for watching this video until the very end. We've been together for more than a year now, and once again, as always, I wish you good health and happiness wherever you may be right now. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Thank you. See you next year.